Greetings and welcome to the Cancer Interviews podcast. I'm your host, Bruce Morton. Our interviews illuminate the stories of people who have survived cancers whose names you know: breast cancer, prostate cancer. What you might not know is that tens of millions of individuals around the world are affected by one of nearly 7,000 rare diseases, some of which are cancers. On this segment, we're going to hear from a gentleman who leads a group that seeks to provide support to cancer sufferers who often don't have many support options. He is Michael Maalouf, president of the RareDIG Interest Group based at McGill University in Montreal, Quebec, Canada. So Michael, bienvenue au Cancer Interviews and welcome to Cancer Interviews.
Thank you so much for the wonderful introduction and for having me on this show. It means a lot, and I think you guys are doing really wonderful stuff, and it's a pleasure to be here, honestly.
As are you, and the same to you across the board. So the first thing we want to do, Michael, is the first thing we do with all of our interviews, and that's to learn a little bit more of our guests, their lives outside of their involvement with this interview. So if you would tell us a little bit about where you're from. We already know what you do for a living, but where you're from and what you like to do for fun, that sort of thing.
Oh, absolutely. So I grew up actually in Toronto, which is a city in Ontario in Canada. I studied there at the University of Toronto. I studied physiology and pharmacology there. And honestly, a lot of my free time, I like to play soccer. I like to stay active. And I also like to, stay social and meet new people all the time and learn their stories. And that's actually one of the things that made me interested in rare diseases to begin with, was when I was doing a lot of research at the Hospital for Sick Children in Toronto. I got to talk to a lot of different patients as well as doing research. And I also learned a lot about various rare diseases there. And that's sort of how everything started for me, how I got interested in this area.
Okay, you've sort of answered my next question, but I will allow you to maybe be a little redundant or go beyond that. But the Rare Disease Interest Group, it exists. There's a reason for its existence. Why does RareDIG, as we also call it, why does RareDIG exist?
Yeah, absolutely. So really, RareDIG, it's a group of medical students, and we're fully run by medical students here we're a group of medical students who are interested to raise awareness for rare diseases, because there is oftentimes a lack of representation for those diseases, especially when it comes to diagnosis and treatment. And we're really trying to tackle the awareness issue from the early stages of medical education. So that's really what's our main interest, because we are a group of medical students. And so that's really our strength, that we can stay together and raise awareness as a group. And actually, we've kicked off a lot of different chapters in recent years. So we started in 2017, but actually now we have chapters across North America, including at the University of Pennsylvania, Johns Hopkins, and Georgetown University. And some of the things we aim to do and how we aim to raise awareness are through educational events. We also do patient perspective series, where we actually have patients and their families do an interview much like this, where we get to discuss some of the things that people with rare diseases go through from the source. A lot of the times our education comes from textbook information, and we learn a lot about the science behind the disease, but our interest is really to put a face to what's going on in the rare disease world. And it's one thing to read those statistics, but it's another thing to hear the story, directly from those families. It's very touching. And so that's some of the stuff we're doing. And really our aim is to basically to raise awareness for rare diseases, especially in the medical student community.
Now, it's one thing to have an idea. It's one thing to be motivated. It's quite another, Michael, to act on it. Could you talk about the process that involved the chain of events connecting this idea and putting it into action?
Yeah, so so actually for me, I started off advocating for rare diseases as an undergrad. So as I mentioned, I was studying pharmacology at the University of Toronto, and also I did some research and volunteering in pediatrics. And so those two things were really my first exposure to rare diseases. I got to see a lot of the struggles of not knowing what the diagnosis was and the delay in diagnosis that a lot of the people that I met really experienced, and it really touched me and made me do more research and get involved with rare disease interest group over there. I started off volunteering with a group called Ben's Friends Patient Communities, and so I got to meet and learn about the experiences of patients with rare diseases. And so when I started my medical school here at McGill University, I saw that the rare disease interest group already existed. So it was there before me, and it was initiated by a group of medical students here. And that's really how I got started. And through that, I really got the chance to continue to learn more about the unique features of rare diseases and connecting with patients and families. That's really something that really hasn't stopped happening. And honestly, right now, we're trying to do a lot more research into highlighting the need for rare disease education across North America. That's something that we just got started on. And honestly, it's been great. And I think that the more people we can connect with and the more people that we can talk to and have on our platforms, and such as this one, I'm very grateful for that, the better I think the awareness issue will be addressed. And then we can start to make a difference, because the first step is just education and awareness, I think.
Now, you've had two environments as far as your medical education is concerned. First, University of Toronto, now at McGill. So you've been surrounded by a lot of med students just by being part of that environment. Has it been a tough sell with other medical students to get them on board to combat rare diseases, rare cancers as you have? Or have you found a lot of med students who want to embrace this as you have?
Yeah, so surprisingly, I think that once there is an awareness about this issue, I found in my experience that medical students across North America that I've had the pleasure of working with are so motivated and so interested, because really it has so many things that I think anyone in medicine would be attracted to. That number one, there's a lot of patient connection when you're talking to someone, and that's something that especially in the early stages of medical school, it's typically very textbook heavy. So I think that's the first opportunity that through rare disease interest groups and patient advocacy groups in general, you get to be in touch with the population you serve directly from an early stage. And aside from that, it's a great first exposure in advocacy to learn, what are some of the ways that you can raise awareness and motivate people to make a difference. And so one of those ways is we recently have been working on making a research grant to encourage students to do research in rare diseases. So if you in our university, if you choose to do research with one of the profs in rare disease, we're working on developing a grant for that. And so that's just a small little thing that, it's a small step, but if all the universities did that, you can imagine how much more research might be done in rare diseases. And that's one of the areas that there's a need, for example. Yeah.
Now, we had talked about med students, but I would think that it would aid what you are trying to do if you can get some more established members of the medical community involved to apply a little extra inertia to what you're doing. How difficult of a sell is it to go to an established cardiologist, an established urologist, and get them to throw their weight behind what you're doing? Is that a difficult thing, or are you finding that there are established members of the medical community who also want to get behind what you're doing?
Oh, that's an excellent question. I think that there is always an interest, but it first just needs to be brought to the attention of, those people who are already advanced, let's say, in their careers. And oftentimes, it's not that people don't want to get involved, but maybe opportunity hasn't presented itself in a very easy way to get involved. So, and of course, everyone has busy schedules and stuff like that. But from my experience, once people are approached, for example, to give a talk in their specialized areas of medicine, for example, in cardiology, in rare diseases in cardiology, like rare arrhythmias, stuff like that, there is absolutely an interest. And some of my biggest mentors have been, clinicians who really inspired me to get involved in this. So it's almost like it's a positive feedback loop that one person inspires the next, and it just continues and continues. And it's not necessarily that the professors or the teachers are always the ones that are going to inspire the student, but sometimes, like you mentioned, students can also reach out to their professors and try to shed light on this issue, and some of the ways that they could get involved as well.
Now, if you like what you hear in this segment, we invite you to subscribe to our podcast by clicking the links below. Once there, you will see a bell icon, and if you click on that, we will notify you when we post a new interview. Now, we are a cancer interview forum, so Michael, if you would, just give us an example of a rare form of cancer.
Yeah, so for me, what comes to mind is one form of rare colorectal cancer syndrome is Lynch Syndrome. I'm sure a lot of people have heard of this. And what's interesting about rare cancers is it's a bit of a misnomer. And I'm sure you've heard this as well, that if we think about rare diseases, maybe individually, for example, Lynch syndrome or other rare diseases and rare cancers, we think of a disease that occurs in a small proportion of the population, maybe 1 in 10,000 or less. But actually, if you look at them all together, and specifically rare cancers, they account for 22% of all cancers diagnosed worldwide. And so this is absolutely not rare, because it's even greater than some of those common forms of cancer that you listed earlier on. And it's just the fact that they're so unique, some of these types of cancers, is what makes it hard to treat and maybe hard to diagnose at this stage. But taken together, it's actually a large proportion of those cancers that are diagnosed are actually rare. So it's a bit of a misnomer. And that's the thing about, I think that's part of raising awareness, bringing that to light.
So first of all, it's difficult in some instances to diagnose a rare cancer, but once one is diagnosed, what does that person face by way of hurdles and obstacles, Michael, that, say, someone like myself who is diagnosed with prostate cancer, what are some of the obstacles they face that I might not face?
Oh, that's a very important question that you bring up. So I'd start by saying that since those rare cancers that I mentioned are so unique, oftentimes with a very unique, for example, genetic background to the disease progression, or the way that it might come to be is very unique. So that's the first thing that's the challenge, is that since there's so many different kinds, it ends up that it's not as common to find two people with the same treatment that might work. And actually, like I was mentioning earlier, one of the biggest issues is in research, because in medicine, everything these days is aimed to be evidence-based, right? So anytime you're going to suggest a certain medication or treatment or surgery, ideally, it should always be backed with the strongest level of evidence, which is based on large population studies. And so that you can get a very, very strong and confident result that, look, this drug or this surgery is the best option right now. And so for common forms of diseases or common cancers, there are many studies like that. But as you can imagine, when there's a smaller population of people with a certain disease, it's hard to get that large volume and the large numbers to get those results with confidence that, look, this is the best treatment for this disease. So more and more, it seems like those treatment options need to be personalized. And so instead of making one massive trial that will be an overarching rule for everyone with this type of cancer, it might be more case by case and very unique options for treatments For example, in the future, it might involve more genetic therapies and very exciting new avenues like that. But of course, this will require, like we're saying, a lot of awareness and a lot of motivation for pharmaceutical companies and labs to decide that we're going to do research on a rare disease instead of tackling something maybe that has already a lot of research going into it. Not that that's not important, but it's important to get an understanding of rare diseases, because we may be surprised to find that learning about a rare disease might actually inform us about more common diseases as well, as is often the case with basic science research. It's not always clear what's the benefit going to be from that research.
Now, you had briefly mentioned a genetic component in this, and one of our previous guests is a doctor, a colon cancer doctor, a former GI doctor, who is very, very bullish on genetic testing as a way to get out in front of all cancers. Would you say that can also aid in the fight against rare cancers?
Yeah, so I think more and more as technology progresses, and especially genetics, it's something relatively new. It's something that it's exponential, the rate at which discoveries are being made in genetics. And so I do think that there will be more and more avenues for personalized medicine through genetic gene therapies. And that's something that I think is going to be more and more popular in the future. But I do think that, of course, like with anything, it has to be approached, cautiously. And it's always a double-edged sword. Whenever there's some kind of a new treatment, one should always consider new potential side effects or new complications, or maybe some people might be excluded. There might be inequalities to who can access these medications, especially if they're very new, they might be super expensive. But I do think that with time, just like a lot of technologies, we're seeing that the cost of production can slowly go down. So it might be ultimately a benefit in the long term. And it's something very exciting. I do think that there's a lot of potential for that. I'm not an expert at all in that field, but it's something that I am following, from the outside, and it's something I'm very interested in as well.
Michael, you had talked about education and awareness, and those are certainly great components to get the ball rolling to take a lot of rare cancers out of the dark and put them into the light. But if you were contacted by someone who fell into this profile, somebody who has been diagnosed with a rare cancer, is there anything by way of action that RareDIG can do for them? In other words, maybe networking and putting them in touch. Maybe you might hear about somebody in Saskatoon who has a rare cancer, but there is no doctor who can treat them for that. But there could be a doctor in Toronto who could. What are some of the things that RareDIG can do for someone after they've been diagnosed with one of these rare cancers? Yeah,
so actually, RareDIG doesn't have a formal referral system or anything like that. Like we're not a we don't practice medicine. It's really an advocacy group. However, we would love to be in contact with anyone who would like to reach out, because we do have a network and we do have a lot of people that we have worked with in the past who know, different rare disease advocacy groups and patient support groups. So that's something we can definitely help with, like socially, to find a support network. I know is very challenging, and it can often feel very lonely for patients who are recently diagnosed and their families to find that community. But I do think that once they do, that's something we can help people do through our network, is find that community, because oftentimes that really reduces a lot of the anxiety. And it's kind of like having an older sibling, someone who's been through it before, someone you can ask for advice, stuff like that. So that's something we definitely are very open. We have a website actually, and you can actually contact us directly through that website, and we would love to help in whatever way we could. That's something that goes without saying, and it's part of our main mission as an advocacy group. And not only that, we can even put you in touch with professors and as well as give you opportunities to share your story, much like you guys do here with cancer interviews. We also do patient perspective series, and we would love to have patients tell their stories directly to the public. That's something that I think it helps people who may have not had the chance yet to connect with someone. It opens the door right away to connect and to have that social support.
Well, Michael, I think there's no time like the present to provide the information that someone might need if they want to contact RareDIG. So if you would provide website information or any other way that somebody can contact RareDIG.
Yes, so if you actually go to our website, the website is www.raredigmcgill.com. And from there, you can find our email, or you could just email us directly from the website, and you can see all of us and all of the activities that are ongoing on our website. And please feel free to reach out to us. It's always a pleasure. The more people we can be connected with, the better.
Our guest is Michael Maalouf. He's the president of the Rare Disease Interest Group based at McGill University in Montreal, Quebec, Canada. Now, you had mentioned earlier, Michael, that there are some other organizations here in the United States, University of Pennsylvania, Johns Hopkins, who are already doing sort of the same thing that you are. Is there anything that RareDIG is doing to reach out to other Johns Hopkins and other universities of Pennsylvania so they might join your rank, and that would increase the awareness effort exponentially?
Yeah, so actually, it's interesting you asked this, because it's something, one of our long-term goals, and that's how we actually started to get connected with these universities and students there, has been to expand our group to be, not just the McGill group, but also across North America. So all the time, we're always connecting with universities one by one and kind of helping them get set up and start kind of like a welcome package, like here are some of the activities we're doing, and here's how you can get involved with our activities, but also start your own in your own university and get guidance from professors and specialists in your community. And this has been extremely successful. And some of my colleagues at, for example, UPenn have already started doing their own research projects in rare diseases. And Johns Hopkins, they're doing a lot of social media advocacy. And these are all things that, we hadn't done initially, and it inspired us to do the same. So it's kind of like, it's always a two-way street with these kind of things that, you encourage other universities, but at the same time, with time, they're going to come and give you opportunities and ideas as well. And so we've been reaching out to all kinds of universities recently as well. Georgetown University, the University of Montreal here. We have more than one university here that's been getting involved. And it's something that's very, very exciting to see. And it's amazing how it's kind of like a ripple effect that, one university after the other, and before you know it, we might just be like a massive organization. So we're really excited for that. But of course, everything takes time, but we're very optimistic about that. It's something we're very passionate about.
Now, you've mentioned some very prestigious institutions of higher learning: University of Toronto, McGill, Johns Hopkins, UPenn. These are all in North America. Can you envision a day in which these efforts of yours might branch out overseas?
Yeah, absolutely. So before I was at RareDIG, the presidents before me actually had a lot of interaction with some organizations in the UK and overseas, like you mentioned. So that's something that we absolutely would love to branch out with time, and also to continue to, it's not even about just being in North America. That just happened to be a very convenient first step for us, but also in the UK as well, and all across Europe and anywhere really in the world that someone wants to be connected these days with internet. It's so easy to get connected when you're miles apart. So that's something that definitely we're very excited to continue to do, and there's a lot of prospects there.
All right, Michael, we're going to wrap things up now. As we do so, I'm going to throw a question out at you that, again, this is one of my questions in which my guest has partially answered it, but even if we're a bit redundant here with the answer, there's nothing wrong with that. The last thing I want to ask you, as bleak as things can sometimes be for those diagnosed with rare cancers, based on what you're doing, based on what's being done at UPenn, Johns Hopkins, et cetera, can you see a brighter future for these people? And if so, elaborate.
Yeah, so I'll say absolutely, without any doubt, that there is a brighter future. Everything has its challenges. You know, every hurdle has a solution as well. And I think that the number one key to keep in mind is to not lose optimism and to remember that the strength that we have as a community is really in the people that you can connect with. And so just like we're doing this interview right now, and we've connected in the past and we've met through mutual connections as well, it's in the same way that I think people who are experiencing that kind of loneliness early on, when you're not sure what the diagnosis, what's going to be the treatment, what's the outlook, always reach out to someone, the closest person to you, then the closest organization to you. And just like you're doing with cancer interviews and with us through RareDIG, it's all about getting the right connections so that you can enter the community and feel less alone, and you start to learn from those who have been through that as well. And especially with rare diseases and rare cancers, it can be very challenging because they're rare. But at the same time, remember that there are communities out there for us, and that's the key point. You know, aside from all the research and all that stuff, the number one thing is just to stay connected with your community.
He is Michael Maalouf, president of the Rare Disease Interest Group based in Montreal. And before we go, Michael, one more time, that web address, please.
Yes, absolutely. So our website is www.raredigmcgill.com. So you can contact us anytime there.
Okay, excellent. Michael, thanks so much for your time, and thanks for shedding some light in an area that could probably use a great deal of candle power. Really appreciate it, and by all means, best wishes with what RareDIG seeks to do and the message that it seeks to send out to others. Once again, Michael, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you so much. It's absolutely a pleasure for me, and it's been great. Thank you so much.
And that's going to wrap it up for this episode of Cancer Interviews. Once again, we want to remind you that if you are facing a cancer journey, or you know somebody who is, you are not alone. Until next time, we'll see you on down the road.
Thanks for joining us today. For more information, please visit us online at cancerinterviews.com. We appreciate you tuning in, and we'll see you back here again next time on the Cancer Interviews Podcast.